That person over there who's got the little gazebo on the roof. I want to marry that person.
Iva Skochová is showing me the incredible view from the rooftop terrace of the office that she shares in Prague's Vinohrady, at the very end of Americká St. Iva has a travel column in the newspaper Lidové Noviny and is also preparing a book about crashing weddings in nearly 24 countries around the world. But today she's showing me around her Prague, starting right here in Vinohrady.
Maybe it's going to sound strange, but it's always reminded me of New York a little bit. The West Village, to be precise.
Why do you say that?
I don't know, it's just this leafy area where it's got a real neighborhood feel to it, which is so hard to find in Prague. Prague is not really a neighborhoody type of place. I mean, every part of Prague is more or less the same. It's hard to find like gay areas and hipster areas and all that. I mean, it's starting to change a little bit, but it's not like that. But here, I feel like there's so many great places on Americká, just shops and restaurants and cafes. Like now when I walk down the streets, I feel like people actually recognize me, greet me, and they know me. Just that's very rare here.
One thing that struck me coming here today was how this area hasn't changed that much over the years. It seems to me that many areas of Prague, especially the areas that are quite near the city centre, have improved hugely. I'm talking about places like Karlín, Vršovice and maybe Žižkov, but here it doesn't seem to me to have changed that much.
Well, I think it has changed, but in a less drastic way. You don't really see the kind of development that you would see in Karlín. You know, there are no chain restaurants moving here really. So what you do see if you know the area pretty well is that, you know, the restaurants come and go, the coffee shops come and go, but they all tend to be independent little places that are, like I said, they have more of a neighborhood feel. So yes, the development has been very sensitive to the neighborhood.
When you talk about community, I must say where I live in Žižkov, very near to Acropolis, I don't have a great sense of community. There's no nice cafes, there's nowhere that feels like a kind of centre of the community.
Exactly, and I think that's the difference between Žižkov and Vinohrady. I had the other day somebody asked me, they had a son who's going to be a student here from the U.S. for a year, and he was thinking of living in Žižkov, which I thought would be a great area because that's where all the other students live. And that is exactly the problem with Žižkov too, because you have got all these people who only live there for 6 months or for a year. So the neighborhood really doesn't have a chance to develop a great community. Whereas here, Vinohrady has always been a desirable residential area and people have a hard time leaving it. So you've got people who've lived here for the last 20 years. So when I walk on Americká, you know, I've got the guy who sells Italian food and sells really good coffee, so I go buy my coffee there. And then I've got this Mediterranean restaurant where, you know, the woman who's a waitress there, she knows what I want to eat before I even know what I want to eat. So it's just really great that you've got people greeting you on the street, and I think that's just really nice.
And Vinohrady means vineyards, and quite near where we're standing now is, I think, the only remaining vineyard in Vinohrady.
Yeah, I think that's correct. It actually used to be, Prague used to be a city full of vineyards, and I believe in the 16th or 17th century. And yeah, in Havlíčkovy Sady, right over here, there is a great big vineyard where you can actually go to the Grabovka villa and sample some of the wines. It's really nice.
And how are the wines? Have you tried them?
Well, they're not bad. I mean, we're talking Prague wines, we're talking Czech wines. So, you know, this is not the south of France, but with that in mind, I think they're perfectly nice. This is the place where I come to buy rice, jasmine rice or sushi rice.
Iva Skochová is showing me her favourite foodstuff stand on the next stop on our tour of Prague, at Holešovická tržnice, which is very near to Vltavská metro station. The complex, built in the late 1900s as the city's main abattoir, has for many decades been home to one of its biggest markets. Today the place is a riot of colour, with the mainly Vietnamese stallholders peddling a mind-boggling array of often garish, cheap goods.
I've got a love-hate relationship with this place, because on one hand, I think this is the most wasted piece of land in the center or the outside center of Prague, because it's this huge market of just cheap stuff. that I always wonder, like, who even buys this stuff, or why is there so much of it? But on the other hand, I really love the buildings here, and I just think that this place has such great atmosphere, or could have a great atmosphere. So I walk around here and I kind of daydream about what it could be.
I seem to recall when I first came to Prague, I would see old ladies who would travel halfway across the city to buy eggs a little bit cheaper at the food market here. Is the food market still going?
There's a little bit of that still going on. There's a farmer's market here on weekends. But no, I think it has lost a lot of that, which is a shame, because it used to be a place where real people would shop for real things, and nowadays I don't see a lot of that.
Well, now it's full of garish junk like cheap T-shirts, flick knives, all kinds of crap, basically.
Exactly. Which, I mean, there is something that I like about that too, because Prague in so many ways is such a boring white people town. So it is kind of nice to see this like hustle of an Asian city basically in the center of Prague, because it has that little bit of that going on.
A couple of years ago, I interviewed a guy whose company said that they were planning to take this market upmarket, but from what I can see around me, that hasn't happened.
No, that hasn't happened, and I think a lot of people have been hoping to do something more with this place. I mean, you've got Sasazu here, which is a upmarket restaurant, which is very good, and the club. And I think a lot of people were hoping that other places would follow. And, there are a couple upmarket places here, and the Italian place Mercato is here, but it just hasn't really happened fast enough.
You were telling me also that there's a hidden restaurant here, or a hidden food stand.
Yes, my favorite Vietnamese place in all of Prague is right here, near the Norma meat shop, behind all the shops that sell anything from toy guns to cheesy clothes and neon lights. It's located below the number 8, so if you're ever looking for it, it's got the best Vietnamese soup.
That's also a trend in Prague in recent times of Vietnamese restaurants. I think there was maybe one or a couple only a couple of years ago. Now there seems to be many.
Well, yeah, it was about time. There's the Vietnamese, I think, are the second or largest, third largest minority in the country, and really there really hasn't been any Vietnamese restaurants until a few years ago. So I think all the Vietnamese people who ran Chinese restaurants realized that they might do a better job actually running Vietnamese restaurants, which tend to have a lot better food.
Our afternoon ends on the other side of the city with a beer at Café Vlesa, a bar and venue in Vršovice. In the last couple of years, the cool but unpretentious Vlesa has been one of the liveliest night spots in Prague, drawing a mainly young crowd from around the capital. Iva Skochová tells me it's one of her favourite places too.
Café Vlesa is one of my favorite places. It always reminds me like I'm back in the 70s. I just love the decor. It's a late night kind of place, and I'm a late night kind of person, so there's always this place always tends to be open, and I always find people that I know here.
And you were telling me on our way here, this place has an interesting history.
Yeah, from what I understand, in this building used to be the very first Prague brothel that had hot running water,
which was a pretty big advantage for the ladies who worked here. But in more recent years, it also had a different history. It used to be called, not Café Vlesa, that's what it is now. It used to be called Shakespeare & Sons. But somehow it seems to me to be much more lively now than it was then. What do you think the difference is?
Well, I think this area really needed this kind of place. Shakespeare & Sons, I think, was great, but it was just a little quiet for this neighborhood.
Also here at Vlesa, they have, which they didn't have before, a downstairs music venue part.
Exactly, that's a great little place, because there's something going on here basically every night, whether it's a photo exhibit or a concert or a techno club, clubbing evening. There's always something, and it's a really diverse set of events that they have here. When
you don't come out here, where do you go out in Prague?
I do tend to go out in this area most of the time, and here in Vršovice or in Žižkov or sometimes in the center, although I do try to avoid it, avoid the old town nowadays. I have some secret places.
And you've also spent a lot of time in New York. You still are traveling there quite often, I believe. How do you find going out here compared to there?
Well, it's a lot easier here. There's just not that much pressure. In New York, it's every night you've got a choice of 75 events to go to and parties, and so you always find yourself stressed that you made the wrong choice about going to the wrong party or meeting up with the wrong people or trying to do too much. Here it's a lot more laid back, and what I like about going out here is that the places aren't quite as rigid about what they are. You can get a coffee in a restaurant, you can get a beer in a wine place, you can get you can basically eat in every pub.